Hi, and welcome to FrazlCast. Climb aboard the Gnome Train.
Woo! Chugga, 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 woo!
Please make sure to keep your limbs and experimental instruments inside the train at all times. And now, on with the show.
A podcast by a Blizzard fan gnome about World of Warcraft and geeky stuff. I promise you, they do talk about the World of Warcraft. They just go off the rails sometimes.
So I'm Frazley, and I am joined by a super talented individual, writer, comic, and voice actor, Trendane.
Hello.
It's good to have you here, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. I'm not sure why I'm here, but here I am, nonetheless.
You were so much fun at BlizzCon, and you helped keep me sane. It was nice having somebody there.
Okay, false advertising. Don't do that. Nobody is sane at BlizzCon.
No, that is true. We're all taking the nerd juice, and we're all like, ah.
Yeah.
And I've got a question. I wanted to know: are you a sibling of mine? Because your last name is Sparks.
That's true.
And I'm a Sparkspan, so I didn't know. Are we related in some way?
There may have been, because I usually play Druids, so it's entirely possible that at one point in my Druidic career, I may have become one of the tree guys. I almost never use that form, so it's entirely possible that I might have dropped an acorn or something, which then sprouted, and there you are, which makes you a nutty gnome. No, never mind.
and would that be you? Would be my dad or my grandpa?
I don't know if it was like a from a cutting or something. Then you would just be a. Never mind. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just I'm not that much of a botanist. I just try to grow plants and usually fail in the extreme. I get them to sprout, and then they get about this tall, and then they'll the next day. It's called damping off, and it's a horrible thing. I need to stop overwatering. I think that would probably. Anyway, are we related? Probably not.
But you never know. I mean, or we could be siblings or something.
Very distant siblings.
Yes.
Extremely distant. Like there's an entire maelstrom of distance between.
Which just proves gnomes need to have druid forms.
I don't know. You'd turn into like kittens.
Yeah. Little baby kittens.
That could be dangerous. That's actually a good idea. What instead of bears? I mean, raccoons, maybe?
Okay, I can see raccoons because, I mean, we're getting Vulpera, so we could be...
and you guys are always, crawling around in junkyards and stuff. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else is there? The cat, the bear, but what instead of a whale? Or a walrus or whatever the thing is? What would be the smallest? I mean, you could be a harp seal. And then we could all go clubbing. No, that's cruel. Sorry. That's extremely cruel. Don't do that. And then what would your travel form be? Probably just a rat, and you just basically disappear here and reappear over there. Because those guys, they can just do boop, and they're gone, and the next thing you know, they're over there instantly. It's probably a different rat, but whatever. They have a collective consciousness, just like some gnomes.
I wonder. Deep One Tram has a lot of rats.
Oh my God! Have I been crushing your family?
Oh no! Oh,
I've done that quest a lot.
Me too.
Wait a minute. Then that's you are killing your own people. If that's
no. Okay. Well, I better move on before anybody's gets mad at me.
Yeah, we'll have to delete this. Just get rid of the evidence. Right.
Yeah.
Good plan. Yeah.
Thankfully, this is not recorded anywhere, so this is not going to go on. So on this episode, I want to get to know you better. So you've enthralled me since we met in the Worgen's How Pack.
That's just because you didn't resist the role. That was the
And we talked a lot at BlizzCon.
Yeah.
You were in line with when we met Christy Golden.
Yeah. I still felt guilty. I felt really guilty.
Why?
Because I wasn't there to talk to her. I was there to talk to you. And so after you get finished, just heaping praise upon her and everybody else there, and she kind of looks at me like I'm like, I don't know. So I'm just, and she's like, okay. And I was like, oh God, she's so genuine about it's okay. I'm like, no. But I felt guilty the entire con, so it wasn't just about her.
Well, and in her line, it was cool, like meeting the production person for the Ragnar statue, which I have got over there. Got to meet one of the people that helped design that for the 15th collector's edition. Got to meet the person behind the Sylvanas cinematic. I almost didn't get in line for that. I was too afraid to go there, but I'm glad I did.
Yep, cool stuff. I just walked around a lot. because I couldn't get to this is why I felt guilty being at BlizzCon. And I think I've told you about this before, Frazley, was that I play WoW.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I think I fire up Hearthstone like once every 2 decades or so. I almost never play. And so all of these developers are putting on all these shows. And I was like, I don't care. I mean, not in a kind of a dickish way. I don't care. But it was like, this is not my kind of game. It's like, I don't care about, first person shooters and stuff. And so I was like, the only thing I really have an interest in is Warcraft, and I can't get anywhere near any of the presentations because lines are 4 miles long. And so, I just kind of felt like I was spinning my wheels. But granted, the Hearthstone Tavern was very nice. And the band that they had there, the musicians, were just fantastic.
I'm with you on that. Like I only went to the opening ceremony and then I went to the What's Next panel because I happened to be at the right time to get in before they closed off the line. And then I never went to the Q&As or the voice actors panel because, one, I went to breakfast that day, and I chose people for panels, which was, some people agreed with me, but sometimes people were like, but you paid money for panels. I was like, I paid money to be at BlizzCon in the security area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, and I didn't pay money. Actually, Crushinator gifted me the ticket. So Crushinator paid money for me to be in the security area. Thank you, Crushinator. But yeah. But I would say BlizzCon was the people, and I feel like I got what I was hoping to get from BlizzCon. I mean, before we get sidetracked on tangents, I'm known for tangents. There's another voice I love to hear.
Okay, I'll leave.
Epicinsanity.
Yeah. Oh.
Epicinsanity shows up for a little bit, and then he leaves. Epicinsanity. What time is it?
It's time to go around the table.
Great idea. So what have you been up to recently? We will start with Trendane, and yeah, he's here and then he leaves.
I was going to say, I'm the only other person at the table, so this isn't going to take very long. You can either start with you or with me. Okay,
I'll start with you.
Okay, that's fine. What have I been up to lately? I've been working a lot. So one of the things that I do is I do audiobooks. Specifically, I work for Catalyst Game Labs, narrating their Shadowrun and Battletech novels. I've been working on this Battletech novel called Forever Faithful, which was written by Blaine Lee Pardo. It came out in February last year, and they were like, hey, will you narrate this? It's a brand new Battletech novel. I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely, no problem. And then kind of got lazy about it. It was partially laziness and partially like there are many different levels of depression and whatnot, and a lot of us suffer from different kinds of depression and whatnot. And mine, I either wind up sleeping all the time, or I wind up binge watching things like The Witcher, which isn't that big of a deal because it's like, 11 episodes or something. But then I'll start binge watching The X-Files, which has a few more, and it's just like, I'm just going to watch 1 or 2. And the next thing I know, I'm in season 4 and it's 3 weeks later. And I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, I should have finished this novel probably about 9 months ago. And so I've been recently talked to my boss at Catalyst, and he was like, when do you think you can have that finished? And I'm like, oh no. Now he's starting to ask when I can finish it. And I'm like, I'm only halfway through the editing. And he's like, can you have it done by the new year? I'm like, this was like the beginning of December when he asked. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Sure. Yeah. And then it's coming down to the wire. And I'm like, it's okay. I'll just work through tomorrow night and it'll be fine. What night was it that I said that? New Year's Eve. Boom, 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 boom. Fireworks going off all over the neighborhood. I've got no silence. I can't record anything. I'm like, well, this is the wash. Okay, so I'm not going to get it done in time for that. But I've got like maybe 6 chapters left to do on my quality control because everything's been recorded. It's been edited. I'm just doing the quality control pass through to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And the things that I've missed, I've tagged so that I can go back and fix them. And then I'll do all the audio processing so that it fits Audible's requirements. And then I will zip it up and upload it and go, there, it's done. You can get it away from me, please. I don't want to work on this one anymore. And then I immediately have to start on a Shadowrun trilogy, which is awesome.
What is it like narrating an audiobook?
That really depends on what kind of an audiobook you're doing. Because a lot of people, when they think of audiobooks, they think of things like Shadowrun and Battletech and Dragonlance and spy novels and the occasional young adult stuff or, whatever. But you could narrate anything. And whenever I wind up getting asked by people, much like we're doing now, when they say, I want to be a voice actor, but I don't know if I can do all the voices that are necessary. And I'm like, you don't need to be able to do a lot of voices. You just need to be able to act. And in some cases, not even that, because somewhere out there is a construction worker who lives in town A and is working at site B or site A and whatever. But there's like 2 hours of what we call windshield time, where you're just driving 2 hours there and 2 hours back. That's 4 hours a day that they could be studying to do what they really want to do, which is be a pilot. Now that, if you narrate technical novels, that doesn't require doing a bunch of crazy voices and whatnot. You just need to have a voice that someone can listen to for extended periods of time without falling asleep at the wheel. That's it. As long as you can communicate the data and people can retain it and listen to it, that's still narrating. So it depends on what kind of narration you want to do. Most people are going for, the speculative fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, that kind of thing. And that's fine. And even if you can't do a bunch of crazy voices, you can still do it. It just, because I've heard a lot of audiobook narrations that the person, they had maybe 3 or 4 voices that they could do, but it's not all that common that you run into scenes where you've got an entire banquet, that you have to do all at one time. It does happen. But it's a nightmare. Anybody can try it, and it doesn't require huge acting chops. It just depends on what you want to do.
Would you say that it requires a passion about what you're reading or what you're doing?
Well, with technical manuals, that's not very. You just, or maybe somebody wants to be a doctor. There's another example. If you can rattle off Latin names for organs and stuff, yeah, no problem, go for it. And even if you can't, just get this piece and this piece and this piece, and then just stitch them together and post. Just make it work somehow. It's fine. It helps to have a passion, especially if you're doing more narrative and fiction kind of stuff, because while you have the narrator's voice, which is your purpose in that is just to kind of transition from one scene to another, and then it is the character dialogue that really sells the story. So it's important to be able to do that. And the more passion that you have, between voice acting, which is the more important word, the voices that you can do or the acting that you can do with them, because you can do all of the accents in the world, but if you can't act, it's just going to sound wooden and and stuff, and you're not going to be able to get the flow to it. You won't be able to convince the reader that they are a fly on the wall watching this story take place. As opposed to voice acting in video games, you're doing it all. You're doing all of the voices, every single one of them. And so having the passion for acting, especially when you're doing fiction stuff and whatnot, that'll really help you lean into the thing, because you have to do, as opposed to regular acting on a movie or something, you don't get your facial expression and your body language. Everything has to be communicated through your voice. And so it requires a much greater flexibility to shed this, oh my God, what if I sound stupid? Don't worry about that. Okay. Just lean into it. Because a lot of times when you think you're overselling it, you may not be pushing far enough.
I find that fascinating, because I've been trying a little bit of acting with some of the stuff I do, like the Frazz reports. I've been trying to act a little bit, and I would never call myself an actor, but I can see what you mean, because like some of the reports that I feel have sold have been when I really feel that character in that line.
Yep. It really helps to be able to let go of that kind of trepidation of what if they don't like it? Don't worry about those people. Those aren't the people you're talking to anyway. You are talking to the people who like what you like, because you do what you love. And the people who love that will find you, and they will enjoy what you're doing. So don't worry about the people who don't like it. They're not the people you're talking to.
One of the Audible narrators that has stuck with me the most since I heard him was Tim Curry. He did a series of unfortunate events. He did some of the books. Now, the author of the series did some of the books, but my favorite of the narrations are when Tim Curry does it, because Tim Curry feels like he gets into it. And you can just tell he's having fun, or at least he's showing fun in what he's saying.
Yeah, very true. Stephen Fry did the same thing with the Harry Potter series.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Scholastic, I wish you could release those into the United States. I have to get the other one, which, they're good. But yeah, I want Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
But I can't get them legally, I don't think.
I don't know. I just love that man.
Yeah. Oh, and I love his passion too.
Yeah, it's very good stuff.
Well, I'm going to get more into some of the audio and voiceovers in a second. So let's move on to. So you've been working and working on audio. You've been binging The Witcher. By the way, what do you think of The Witcher?
As someone who has never read the books and never played the game, I really liked it. I do have some small issue. One of them is not a small issue, but there are some slight issues. The first episode, it was difficult to get into Geralt's voice, and I was just like, okay, does he only talk like this? Is this it for his emotive range? And the end of the first episode, I was like, all right, yeah, okay, I can kind of see it. And then by the end of the second episode, I was like, oh my God, where's episode 3? And I was like, yeah. Are we doing any spoilery stuff or no?
No spoilery.
Okay.
Same as like I saw the Star Wars movie and Mandalorian, and no spoilers on those. But I would say I preferred the Mandalorian over the movie. I enjoyed the movie, but the Mandalorian had me hooked from episode 1.
That's what I've heard.
And
really good.
There's a character in the Mandalorian that I think everybody likes, and I won't say what the character is, but you already know.
Probably not. I haven't seen it, but I can guess. I only know like 3 characters I think one of them is in it.
In gaming, I did like Twitch sings, so I've been doing Twitch sings some more. Got the achievement on Twitch for 1,000 hours streamed. So.
Oh, I thought you meant at one time. I was like, ugh.
No.
I don't even want to think about that.
I mean, I've done 18 or not 18. I've done 12-hour streams. I mean, I've done it was an 8-hour stream, so I've done long streams. Oh, definitely play Borderlands 3 if you stream, because there's a Twitch extension, and I had different viewers become these badass mobs because they are called badasses in the game. So I'm not cursing intentionally, and the name appeared as the enemy. So I had Zephyriah and Tellenroyd. They would become an enemy. So you're defeating the one that's watching at the time.
So you want to kill your viewers is what you're saying.
No.
That's what it sounds like.
I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then over in WoW, what I've been working on right now is Lore Master. I meant to get Lore Master last year. Did not get Lore Master last year. I've got the different expansions to go, like Draenor. Oh, Outlands Draenor, the Burning Crusade. Got to do Wrath, Cataclysm, and Pandaria. And Tellenroyd says I killed him dead. I did kill him dead, but in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of gaming, though, you game
sometimes,
yes. And we met while playing a game, and we met up at a convention about gaming. So, how did you get into gaming?
I was thinking about this yesterday because while I occasionally call myself a gamer, I really don't game all that much. To kind of go a little bit out of order with World of Warcraft, one of the most recent iterations of gaming that I do, I play on an RP server. I am very much a hardcore RPer. That's what I love to do. PvE is all right. PvP, no.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, and it's not. When I first started playing back in vanilla, I avoided PvP for the longest time. And then I discovered first when you get into on the Horde side, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I can see this whole, you've got these 5 different areas and you got to retain control of them. All right, this is kind of neat. And what I really liked about it, because it's not that my reflexes aren't fast enough. It's that my memory is not good enough. And I forget which buttons I'm supposed to. I can either look at the screen or I can look at the keyboard. We didn't have mods that are saying push 1, push 2, push 3. None of that stuff existed back then. And I would suffer from massive button confusion. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But what I liked the most about Battlegrounds was that it was PvP when I wanted it. And as soon as I left, PvP was done. So I could get the fix. If the itch came up, I could scratch it easily enough. And then I was out and there was no more PvP. I was fine. So I knew I was never going to get on a PvP server. And they were like, well, there's RP PvP for servers. I'm like, well, that's fine, except for the PvP part of that label. So I don't care about that. I pretty much focused on RP exclusively because I'm an actor. It's what I enjoy doing. I would create a character and his backstory, and I would go through and do all this stuff. I was almost exclusively Horde side for the longest time, basically until Cataclysm was coming up. And then I realized, well, the entire world is going to change, and I have never seen the Alliance side stuff. So I need to experience that content before it gets completely altered. And so I jumped to the Alliance side, and I think I was running a dwarf hunter or something. And I was going through most of them. I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of a neat little area. I like this. Because as much as I love playing a Tauren, having to go to Orgrimmar all the time, I'm like, this place is dead. There's no green here. I don't like this. This is horrible. You go to the Alliance and, oh, good, a forest. Oh, thank God. It's like you go over to the Red Ridge Mountains. There's still, I mean, you got to go get a bunch of fox poop and rub it all over yourself and a bunch of dead leaves. What is it with Blizzard and poop? I don't understand.
I know. I just did one last night.
Even now, you get out there with the Volpera and they're like, could you go get us some hyena poop? We need to make some fertilizer. I'm like, that is a horrible idea. You don't. No, that is like carnal. No, you don't. You got to compost it first. And, I mean, like heat compost, like boil it for like days to kill all the. What is it, Blizzard, with poop? I don't understand. What? Never mind. Has nothing to do with your question. Anyway, so didn't exclusively migrate, but I've for the longest time been in a Worgen RP guild. We are basically a branch of the Gilnean military that still operates out of Stormwind. My character, he's a Worgen Druid, but he's basically a diplomat. He is the arbiter for the thing. So in case we ever have to do any, legal agreements or ambassadorial stuff, and I had stopped playing for a long time. And when I finally came back, when Battle for Azeroth came out, they were like, where have you been? And I was like, oh, where has he been? Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. He's been gone for a long time. What has he been doing?
So you've heard of these new allied races that we have. Well, I was negotiating to see which ones of them I could get to join the alliance.
So that's what he was doing. He was talking to all the ambassadors and he was trying to get the High Mountain to join the thing, all this other stuff. And I was like, that's what, in character, that's what he's been doing. That's why I've been out of game for so long. And so they were like, oh, did you succeed? I was like, no. I got some to join the thing, but not all of it. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. But if you go back to where it started, how did I get into it? I think it was 1986, 1987. Went into the living room for Christmas morning. There were presents under the tree and everything, and I started unwrapping various ones. One of them was a Sega Master System. And we hooked it up. And one of the games that was there was the original Phantasy Star. So, I put that in, plugged it in, and I started playing it. And I'd never really played computer games before. And so I was going through, and I was going through very slowly. I was reading, God forbid, reading like the quest text. It's very not a common thing because we have things like quest markers now. Didn't have that in places like EverQuest, which I never played, but my housemate did. You had to talk to everyone in the city. So I started playing. And after I think it was like 16 hours, my mother was like, are you still playing that game? I was like, yes, it's great. I love this game. And she's like, it can't possibly be that fun. And I saved my game and I handed her the controller. I said, I'll give you 5 minutes. I think it was 4 hours later. I was like, can I have that? She's like, no, no. And then years later, I guess it was around Burning Crusade, my sister informed me that my mother had a level capped night elf rogue on a PvP server. And I'm like, I won't even go there. I'm like, nice. My mom has become a better gamer than me. That's great. Okay. And one of the things I loved the most about Phantasy Star was all the dungeons were first person. So it was like you were inside the dungeon. And then when Phantasy Star 2 came out, it was kind of the 2D isomorphic looking down on top of the thing. And I'm like, I can clearly see around T's two corners and that is a dead end. This takes all the challenge out of working on these mazes. I love those. Phantasy Star lost me at that point. And then people started playing Final Fantasy and they're like, hey, have you checked this out? I'm like, no, not really. No, I've just been playing solitaire mostly lately. So yeah, and I was trying at that point to kind of focus on being a writer. And then joined the army and became a medic and then got out and was a vet tech for a long time and then eventually moved to California and kind of started trying to be a writer again. I joined a group of writers with some of my fellow furries. Oh my God, he's a furry. Yes, I am a furry.
And I want to add, I used to be on I told Leo out in Twitter, I used to be on not the furry hate train, but I used to be ignorant and like
the furry avoidance train.
Yeah. But then I have met so many great furries. I'm like, hey, I think furries are great.
Mm-hmm. A lot of us are. We have a few bad eggs, definitely. But most of us are actually decent people.
Absolutely. And I have met so many great furries.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the writing group that I joined was, unfortunately for me, several of our best writers who lived here in the Bay Area. And I was like, oh my God, am I out of my league? This is just, and so I had written this story that I was pretty proud of. And we got together and Kyle said, okay, go ahead and read it. And I sat down. He's like, no, read it out loud. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm an actor. I can do that. That's not a problem. So I started reading and I got to like the third or fourth line and I realized, oh, wait, that's wrong. It was, it was like I had misspelled something or I'd used the wrong word. And I was like, oh, wait. He's like, no, don't edit. Just read. And I'm like, but he's like, you're learning. That's what we're doing here. You are learning how to do this stuff. And so I kept reading and I kept finding error after error after error because you have to read it out loud. If you just read it in your head, you will mentally correct for whatever errors you're seeing on the page and you won't even realize you're doing it. But as soon as you start reading it out loud, it goes through a different part of your brain and suddenly you're like, oh, that's not, no. Oh boy. And so you go through and you make notes as you're reading it out loud and you go back and you correct everything. So it's much like with artists who will look at their work in a mirror or turn it upside down and it changes your perspective enough that you start noticing errors that you didn't see, the regular way around. Same sort of thing with writing. Just read it out loud and you will spot things that you didn't realize were there. Anyway, so eventually there was this wonderful game that came out called Skyrim. And I'm like, hello, this is back to my lovely first-person dungeons. Yes, okay. I can get into this. Fine. Oh, I get to play a cat person. I mean, I'm a wolf, but I get to play a cat person. Yeah. I can become a werewolf. Oh, this is going to be delicious. And just great. And so I played Skyrim quite a bit. And then when I discovered the mod community, they discovered that I can do a bunch of voices. They're like, hey, we're making this mod for Skyrim. Would you come and do voiceover for us? I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And thus Beyond Skyrim Bruma was born and it was great. And now I've continually gone back. There are two games that I go back to regularly right now, and that's World of Warcraft and Empyrean Galactic Survival. Because one is fantasy, they're both fantasy technically, but one of them is, very primitive knights and armors and dragons and stuff. And then one is spaceships and colonizing and laser weapons and stuff. And I love them both. They're both great. And I will end my vomitus of not quite answering, but over answering every question you've asked thus far. Please continue.
You're painting a great picture and you're painting the tapestry of who you are. You mentioned,
sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned Skyrim and cat people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a Khajiit voice?
I do, actually. And Beyond Skyrim, I did what is called male Khajiit Mercurial, which is the generic male Khajiit voice, and voice both of the followers that you can get. One is an orc named Doomrag,
who sounds an awful lot like this.
And then the other follower is a Khajiit named Dartakto, who you run into in the one of the two taverns that you can go into. But his voice sounds very much like this. Dartakto is one of these, what you call them. You already said that name, and suddenly this one has forgotten it. This is Khajiit. That's what he is. He's a lot of fun. And there was a point where we were recording the voiceover, and we'd been going at this for like 6 hours or so, and I was getting a little bit, having to do this stuff. He was like, just let it roll. Just go with it. I'm like, no, you don't want that. You don't want to just disengage the brake in my brain and just let me go, especially when I'm this tired. The next thing you know, I've given him a new feature that he's occasionally has a hairball. So if you go back and you play the thing, there's a point where he starts laughing. I think he's talking about the fact that the beggar, Reln Tay, will possibly pay you if you will convince this bard to stop singing because he's terrible. And the line was, perhaps he'd even pay you. And Linton was like, oh, okay. That's enough. I'm like,
This reminds me of Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire. I've heard do you know the scene where he's doing voices?
Mm-hmm. At all the masks done?
Yeah. No, it's before that one.
When he's talking on the phone to his wife.
No, even
before that.
Yeah, it's before that one. It was where he's at the job agency. He's talking with them about like the job and stuff like that. He's doing an interview.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard theories that people have said that the actual recording of that was longer and they had to pick the best parts out of it because he just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, he was very much like that. He would get on a roll, and you either stopped him and regretted it, or you just let him go. And eventually people just had to kind of say, just let him go. And they walk away from the thing because they're going to piss their pants, and they're laughing too loud and the mics are picking it up. So you just leave him in the booth and just let him go. And, he's one of my idols. I love that man.
I have to say, so far you have made me laugh a lot. So I don't want to put you on a pedestal, but I think you have his gift. So
that is pedestal that is way too high. I think I am nowhere near that man's genius. But thank you. I appreciate the sentiment.
I don't know how much audio has been able to pick up, but I've just been laughing. Like I know Twitch is seeing me just laughing and laughing. So before we add into writing and the comic and voice acting, is there a memory from gaming that you cherish?
Well, see, with gaming, I would also include tabletop stuff.
Yeah.
D&D as well. And for me, there was, when was it? It seems like it was fairly recent. It might have been Shadowrun or some kind of superhero thing. My character was he was supposed to be a federal agent who was tracking down these extraordinary people with their, pseudo magical abilities and whatnot. And this young couple got into their car. My character was in the back seat, and the boyfriend could, if he clenched his fist, his arm would turn black with these red glowing veins through it. He could punch through anything. His name was Brute Force. And I've forgotten what his girlfriend's power was. I think she could turn invisible or something like that. But my character was in the back seat, and it's like they sit down and they hear the hammer click back on the pistol that I've got at the back of her head. And I'm like, if either of you even breathe a syllable that I don't like, she's going to be all over the windshield. And I said, no, let's have a little talk. And I was like, okay. And as we kept going through it, my character, just playing him the way that felt right, he started getting angrier and angrier and angrier, and started caring less and less, seeing these people less and less like people and more like monsters. What was supposed to be moving towards not necessarily a sense of reconciliation, but an agreement of, look, you people need to control yourselves and we won't come after you. But if you keep doing this, it's not going to end well for you. And the thing just kept nosediving. Part of me was like, I need to pull back on the stick and bring this back up, because this is not going to go well if we continue this. And the DM who was playing the boyfriend, he just kept getting more and more in my face with the thing. And I was like, okay, this is where my character would have had enough. And he was like, fine, have it your way. And he just shot, and she was dead. And the DM was like, and I was like, that's what he'd do. I mean, you pushed it to this point. And I was just horrified that the idea even came up in my mind. But I was like, this is exactly what this character would do. And part of that is acting, and part of it is writing the character. That's one of the things I love about D&D, is that you have to have both aspects in play at the same time. You have to be at least a decent writer, but you also have to be a decent actor. But you have to listen as much as you talk, because you are not making this story by yourself. It is a communal storytelling that, if it's weaved correctly, can be amazing. Critical Role. Yeah, really good stuff.
Would you say that improv is a skill that helps with tabletop?
I would say it is crucial, not just in tabletop, but in acting and narration in general. And you would think in narration that, you've got the entire thing is scripted out. This is what you're supposed to read. But a lot of times, especially with the dialogue portions of the characters, it helps to put what we call effort into the thing, where, you've got a character who's just had like half of a forklift shoved through his chest, and he is very clearly dying. Well, your lungs are going to be filling up with fluids and whatnot. And he's not just going to say, listen, you need to get out of here. They're coming. I'll do what I can to cover you, but you got to go. A, he wouldn't have enough breath in his lungs to make a sentence that long. And B, it would be more gurgly and everything. And if you really want to be a great narrator, you need to understand how that works and be able to replicate those sounds. And sometimes you do them too well. And producer, the people who've hired you are like, can you go back and dial that down just a little bit? Because I started getting like listening to the thing. I'm like, sure, no problem. And then I don't. And just they go ahead and publish it. And say, ha, ha. Anyway, yes, improv is critical. It's a very important skill, as is cold reading, because the two they're related, but they're not the same. The ability to pick up just a piece of paper with something written on it and just immediately commit to it, regardless of what it is, and figure it out on the fly while you're reading it. That's also a crucial skill to have, especially in auditions, because you might go to an audition and you get in there, you're in front of the mic, and the producer like pushes the button and says, "Okay, go." And you haven't had a chance to look at the material at all. It's just been sitting there on the stand when you got in there. And you're like, can you tell me anything about the character? They're like, go. And because, you're wasting their time at that point. It's like, okay. So you need to be able to just dive in and read. And then improv as well. Because if you start fumbling, you need to prove that you can catch yourself and get back to what the script actually says. Because sometimes that's what they're testing for, to see if you can actually recover from a flub in a way that's convincing. And also, maybe they don't know quite what they're looking for yet, and they will know it when they hear it. You'll hear that a lot. And so your ability to improvise, not just words, but voices and characters as well, can often save your butt.
It kind of reminds me of The Incredibles, Edna Mole. They were looking for a character and they didn't know who was going to voice it. And then they found, I think it was the director, did it the best.
I think my favorite thing that she does, aside from the no capes, but when she's like, Helen Parr, darling, I love that. That is just,
yes. That line is great.
I love her so much. Edna's great.
So you got into writing.
It was one of the first things that I thought I wanted to do when I was in high school. I started trying to write because fantasy was huge in my life. I absolutely loved fantasy. Not so much sci-fi. Aside from Star Trek and Star Wars, I didn't care about sci-fi at all. But even Star Wars, you take that story and you remove all the sci-fi from it and make it fantasy. You still got knights and you still got this evil empire with this wizard that controls everything. So, okay, well, yeah. And then you've got the guy who runs the pirate caravan with his werewolf boyfriend, which thing. It works in both ways. Star Trek, not so much, especially since that was designed to be, as Gene Roddenberry put it, a wagon train. Wanted to be a writer because there were all of these ideas churning around in my head that I really wanted to share with people very badly. And I could either sit them down and talk their ear off for 3 days, or as we call it, play D&D, which I wasn't allowed to do because back then in Texas, it was satanic.
Yeah.
You did not do that. I was asking my principal if we could be allowed to play it in high school after classes. And so writing was the next best way. I was pretty good at descriptive, narrative. I could describe a market with a bakery and just have you drooling by the end of the second paragraph because of the sense of the butter and the fresh baked bread and all this other stuff. And my English teacher, she was actually, this is very good. Can I keep a copy of this? I want to use this for future classes. I'm like, what? So suddenly here I've written something that somebody really, really likes. And they're like, I want to share this with other people. And like, oh, no. It's like, do you want to do it or don't you? Which is it going to be? Well, yeah, I want to write stuff, but I didn't think anybody would actually read it. It's like, what are you doing it for? If you're not going to share it with other people, you don't need to write it down. You can keep it all up here. But yeah, and then I won't get into the details of it, but eventually fantasy wasn't good enough. Well, fantasy fiction wasn't good enough. So I started, at that point in my life, I was going through, shall we say, changes. And my thoughts turned from dragons to boyfriends, some of whom were dragons. And so I started writing more exotic, illicit material.
Okay. Yeah.
That I was like, let's not put this where mom can find it. This would be bad. So I kept, a folder that got, this is not a euphemism, that got thicker and thicker and thicker as time went on. And I was like, I need to hide this somewhere where she's not going to find it. You trust me, you can never hide anything from your mother.
No.
She will find it no matter where you put it. Yeah, but I was like, okay, I love writing and I find it really, really enjoyable. And my parents bought me a Brother word processor. It's like a big typewriter that had this big daisy wheel of letters because it didn't have the mechanical arms. But I could type in the whole thing and it would go into memory, and then I could hit the print key and it would just start printing everything out. All I had to do was remember to come back in and put the next sheet of paper in before it started typing on the print wheel. And so I could just walk out of the room, and my stepfather is like, the hell's that sound? I'm like, it's my typewriter. And he's like, but you're out here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's typing up what I wrote earlier. He's like, by itself? I'm like, yes. I'm gonna get a Coke. I grab a Coke and go back to my room. Eventually I found what in the early days of the internet were muds, mushes, mucks, moos, and whatnot. One of the first ones I found was Furry Muck, which was like one of the biggest furry moos that there was. Created my character, and I jumped into west corner of the park, which is where you got dumped when you first logged in. And I was reading the text of the description of the park. And then I met, somebody, I think it was Tess that I met first. And I was like, L space Tess. And I hit enter, and up comes his description. And I start reading it. I'm like, oh, these are my people. Oh my God. And I was hooked. I was like, people who know how to write. Oh my God. People who write the same kind of stuff I like. Ooh, okay. This is good. I have found my mecca. All right. I'm good. And so I was just all hours of the day, I was dialed in, and it's kind of like that scene in The Simpsons where Marge picks up the phone. She's like, this thing's making crazy noises. Like, put that down. You're messing with my carrier signal. Put it down. It was just a blast. And then I fell out of that for a while and wanted to move more into, well, didn't necessarily want to, but kind of got thrust into doing more stand-up comedy at furry conventions, because they were like, people would hear me just going on like this, just vamping in a lobby. Will you host this show we're doing? I'm like, what? You don't even know who I am? I said, no, I was listening to you the other night, and just do the same thing on stage until you look over, the stage manager's like, okay, we're good. And it's like, then the next act is ready to come out and you can go. And so it was, basically an exotic, dance show. Ooh. Usually when an act is on stage and they're doing their performance, the person who's coming up next is getting ready, so that when this person is done, they basically pass each other as they're trading places. That doesn't always happen at places like furry cons, because while one person is out on stage doing their routine, the person who's supposed to be up next is talking to the person who's standing there. Like, oh my God, have you been watching The Witcher? It is so amazing. And it's like, you need to be on stage in 13 seconds. You might want to put your fursuit on. I mean, it's, how long is it going to take you to get dressed? Oh, like 2 or 3 minutes. Like, what are you doing? You please get, anyway, I wound up doing a lot of, emceeing for that, which ran through my comedy material very quickly, because I would look over the stage manager and they're like, I'm like, oh God. Okay. So where are you from? Kind of thing. Never talk to the audience. That's just not a good sign. But yeah, then I moved from that back to wanting to write, and then into wanting to be an actor again. I mean, the wanting to be an actor was always there, but then I was kind of a stagehand on a kids show, did one of my first pieces of professional voice acting there. And then 10 years later, when I was working at EA, went up doing my second piece of professional voice acting. And then after that, I was like, I think I should do this as, for a living. I really like this. This is a lot of fun, and it's challenging, and I enjoy it. And it's acting, but it's not. And it's, okay. And that was 2009 when EA laid off 1,800 people, one of which was me. Hey, but they were like, all right, here's your severance check. And I'm like, bye. And I'm out the door, and I'm like, wait a minute. I take extra taxes, because whenever I fill out my taxes, I always have them take out a little bit more. So I almost never have to pay taxes. They always take just a little bit too much and have to give me a return at the end of the year. I'm like, well, I had kind of, math and I have not been on speaking terms in a long time. And so when I told them to take an extra $25 out of every check, I forgot that I was being paid every 2 weeks. And so instead of $25 a month, it was $50 a month. It was multiply that by 12, it's some number. So my tax return that year was much larger than normal. So I've got a very nice severance check. I've got a very nice tax return. And I'm like, I'm going to go buy some recording gear. Excuse me. And I'm like, and that's where all of this, my recording gear came from. And that's where it started.
I see how one thing added to another. And you started with the writing in school. Mm-hmm. And then I hear you got into D&D and the mucks and the moves at the same time. Then you got into the furry conventions, and from there started emceeing, do comic, got back into writing, got into voice acting. I mean, it really is showing you started working on one gift, you kept expanding.
Yep, ultimately.
Before we move on from this, I have a question, and I think it adds to the writing and the comic.
Mm-hmm.
I saw 2 comics in person recently. and this can go with comics and writing.
Mhm.
How do you choose what jokes or the story to put into your sets or your story? Both arts. How do you choose? I'm bad at choosing one thing. I want everything. Like I want my character to be Superman with the eyes and the Batman fancy stuff, and like nothing can kill him and stuff like that.
It sounded like you were asking, how do you choose what jokes to put into a comedy routine? And then somehow you jumped to Batman and Superman, and I'm not sure where those two connect.
Maybe it's two questions, but we'll start with the comic. How do you choose the set jokes? Because some of his jokes on some of these comedians, you could tell where they were going, and then they changed. I just wasn't jiving with it or something.
Yeah, that's very true. The answer to your question is trial and error.
Okay.
A lot of times, if you think about stand-up comedy just being standing up on stage and going through a routine that you've put together, that's the beginning of it. But you also have to be acutely aware of the audience and what they're reacting to and what they're not. And you have to have almost like modules of a comic set, because if you're in a certain area of the country where suddenly jokes that in California are hysterical are bombing in Illinois, you need to have backup material that you can swap in and out real quick. So you tell a joke and like most of the crowd laughs, but like you, even with the stage lights in your face, you can kind of see people, and you notice that there's not a lot of laughter coming from over there. And you're like, okay, maybe let me try something else. And so you keep things free form enough that you can transition from one piece to another. And so then you also have to pay attention. If you're really good at what you're doing, you pay attention to like what's going on. If you're going to Branson, Missouri, nothing against Branson, Missouri. It's just that's where shows go to die. That's what I'm saying. So, if you're going to be there, read the local newspapers and stuff. Find out what the socio-political climate is like. What are people getting angry about? What are they laughing about? Know your audience is the big thing. Sometimes you don't know your audience until you are standing in front of them, and you have to be able to improv and transition from something that does work, or rather doesn't work in this area of the country, to something that does. So you need to be able to keep things a little bit amorphous until you figure out how this audience reacts, and then you know what to gel with.
Okay. That's fascinating to hear, because that's kind of what I was seeing this comedian go through. Like, they did some jokes about the elderly people, and those
people.
Yeah, and this room is full.
I can say that. I'm going to be 50 in 6 months. I can say that. It's fine.
Okay. And the room was not taking old people jokes, so he had to immediately go, oh, uh-oh, and move over that way.
Let's shift gears real fast.
Yeah. And I don't think he ever fully recovered and I think though I did hear his second show, he did a show later on that week. I think he probably regrouped after that first show, and maybe like we saw his first show of the evening, so maybe he did better the second hour. And then the second comedian I saw, they didn't get the laughter and the applause till they went into, of course, sex jokes at the end, but the room went wild. It's like, and that's where he took the jokes,
because sex is funny, and it's absolutely, it's very easy, lazy comedy to do, but sometimes that's what's necessary. If that's what the audience wants to hear, give them sex, but always leave them wanting more, as the old saying goes.
And then in writing, how do you choose your stories and your characters, like what they will or won't do?
Some of that is instinctive, and different people write in different ways. Some people will establish the world first and then build characters that fit into it, or specifically don't fit into it, because you will need that conflict. Some people don't like conflict, and so when they start writing characters, they try to write things that are very flowery and there's not a lot of collision between anybody. And while it can seem very idyllic and kind of Eden-like, there's nothing to really grab the reader. We need conflict to make things interesting, because without the conflict, there can't be resolution. If there's no resolution, why are you reading? Why don't you just go take a nap? Or something. It's like, so it really depends upon how you write and why you write. Because if you write because you want to show people how good you are, communicating the ideas in your head, you'll probably be an okay writer. It's all right. But if you are writing because you love these things, and this goes back to the passion point that you were talking about earlier. If you write about what you love, some people may hate it. Again, those are not the people you're writing for. The people who love it will find you and they will love your work. Do you develop the world first? Or the flip side is how do you develop the characters? How do you give them a backstory? Most characters have to have some kind of tragedy, in their thing, because otherwise they're fairly two-dimensional and they don't have a lot of depth to them, which is what two-dimensional means. Until you give them something to overcome, they're just riding on a train, staring out the window, drifting through the story, but never really interacting with anything. And that gets very boring very quickly. You don't want to push it so far that they're absolute edgelords and like,
Oh, but look at how tragic I am. Nobody loves me. Even if they do, they don't actually love me because they think they love me, but they don't. And we only discover this after years of intimate relations. And then they say, wait a minute, what is that rash?
no, it's not like that. It's in the shape of Australia, which is on fire. Donate to the proper.
I just saw that MacGyver had a friend who lost her house in that. Yeah.
We thought we had it bad in California. No. I mean, there are many species of plants in Australia that only kind of propagate through fire. I don't think they need this much propagation.
No.
It's no. Anyway, how do you know whether they're going to resonate or not? You have to let people read it. You can't just have the story live inside your own head, even if it's on the page. You have to have beta readers, somebody that you can trust to honestly be kind of brutal with you. Not somebody, and this was the same thing with voice acting for me for a long time. Somebody who will tell you this doesn't work, and here's why. Because if you've got somebody who's just going to say, man, that sucks, that doesn't help you at all. It has to be constructive criticism. It has to be feedback that helps you understand what you did wrong, why it's wrong, and how to fix it. That's good. People who just like, man, that was terrible. I mean, why would this character even do that? You're like, okay, why would this character? This is something I can use. Voice acting for me was the same thing when I started. Not when I started, but from my entire life. My friends and family were always like, you're such a great actor and you do great voices. That is not objective criticism. That is, you bring a piece of paper with mustard smeared all over it to your family when you're 3 years old. Look, you drew a dinosaur. And you're like, it's a supernova. What are you talking about? And so they put it on the refrigerator regardless, and they think it's amazing. That is not objective criticism. And it was the same way with my acting and voice acting. It wasn't until the kids show that I talked about before, where the director, having heard me do my stuff, she told me, have you ever considered doing this for a living? Because you should. That was objective viewpoint. It's her job to know whether somebody should be doing this professionally. And when I was at EA, it was the audio engineer who had just been sitting there recording me doing placeholder voices for Dead Space 2. And when he was copying over the stuff so that I could use it for my demo reel, he was like, do you ever consider doing this for a living? Because you put more into that than most of the professionals they bring in here. I'm like, okay. So when a director and the audio engineer tell you you do really good work, lean into it. And it's the same thing with writing. You need to have people who are willing to objectively tell you whether it's good or bad. And if it is bad, to explain to you why it didn't work for them and what they were expecting. Because whatever they were expecting was built from the initial stuff that they liked, and then it went somewhere they didn't expect it to. You need to find out why. What did this initial setup make them think was going to happen? And from that, you can go back and either just cut all of that out and build something new, or figure out ways to tweak what you already have and make it work. But you need to have the feedback from somebody that you can trust to be brutal, but be kind about it. Because you need to have people who are willing to tell you where you've messed up and not try to be too lovey-dovey with your feelings, because that's not going to get you anywhere. At the same time, you need to be able to take that criticism as it's intended.
Yeah. Been given criticism over the years, even for this show. And I've taken some of the best feedback has been ones that's helped more for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the I hate it, but here's why I want to hate it. I mean,
Right.
I was talking with Navox recently about how I used to not edit out when guests would interrupt me, or I interrupt guests. Now I edit out. I like that you mentioned struggles, and I like that you mentioned overcoming something. What has been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
I'm still working on it. And I suspect I probably always will be. And I didn't have a name for it for a long time. The first person I heard describe it and actually name it, because naming magic is an amazing thing. You're never going to learn how to beat something until you learn its true name. And once I learned it, I was like, oh, it's called imposter syndrome. Gotcha. Okay. This nagging sensation of you don't have any right to be here. What makes you think you're good enough to stand up here with these people? And, self-confident, that's the long-term version of it, self-confidence issues. but everybody suffers from it. If they don't, they're probably an egotistical prick, and you don't want to work with them. But most of the people who are really good at what they do and are people that you want to associate with, most of them are probably dealing with some level, may not be huge, but some level of imposter syndrome where they're like, I don't know, man, I just don't think I did very well on that. I think I could have done better. And maybe they could have, but the point is that they're willing to be vulnerable in a lot of ways. And that's important. It is important to be willing to be vulnerable, but it's something I'm still dealing with. It happened at BlizzCon. One of the guy that I was supposed to meet down there, the guy who convinced me to go, was Zach Clay, is a guy who lives up here in Oakland. And he actually, the last year that Blizzard had a voiceover contest, he won that year. And he went down to do some Heroes of the Storm stuff, I think, or something, some character from that. So he met a lot of people, and he told me, if you want to network with these people, go to BlizzCon. That is the only way you're going to get that done. I made a deal with him that, we would both go, and that we would help kind of reinforce each other and not let each other, pussy out. Just sit there and have the confidence to go up and talk to people, and not just go, "Hi, I'm Tren," and then not talk to them anymore. It's like, I did talk to them. No, you introduced yourself. That's not a conversation. And so, we met up with a bunch of people. He had every reason to dominate the conversation because he knows them, and it's very easy for him to talk to them. Looking back on it, I should have been much more assertive, not to butt in on him and try to take over the conversation, but I should have interjected more than I did to at least make myself stand out in their memories a little bit more. But I didn't feel like I had the right to do that, because why would they listen to me? I'm just some freelance voice actor from the Bay Area. Why would they? And I shouldn't have done it, but I did it. And it is something I am still struggling with. I'm still trying to get over. And then there's another side of me that is like, don't get over this, because you know how much of a jerk you're going to become the moment you start thinking, I'm absolutely everything they need. And it's like, don't do that. So it's this balancing act that you have to maintain. And for me, it's both difficult and it's very scary, because I know how much of a prick I can be if I let that part of me out.
It's kind of interesting. I feel like we're following similar paths on that, because I mean, the impression is one thing I struggle with all the time. I binge Netflix when I'm feeling that there, and I got
Yep.
And I have an ego, and I have to keep it at bay. I mean, it's one of those, I perform for people, but my goal to perform is for people to be edified. Because it's not for me. Well, I love the show because I'm showcasing people in our community, and that helps keep it. It's not about me, but it's about you. It's about people that are on here. But yeah, I can relate in a lot of ways,
because it's a very human thing.
Yeah, it's that gray line between, oh, I'm this and I'm hot stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So, if time and money were no object, what would you be doing?
When I saw this question in the document that you sent me, I was like, oh no. Oh no. And I started thinking, how far do I extrapolate that? I mean, do I go beyond the realm of logic? I mean, he said if there were no issue, if they were not to be considered, it's like, okay, well, if I had infinite time and money, I know what I would do. And part of it is because of, I mentioned earlier that the only two games I really play are World of Warcraft and Empyrean Galactic Survival. Empyrean scratches an itch a little bit for one of the things that I have always, just part of me longs to do desperately, and that is space exploration and colonization. I love the idea of, like, Lost in Space, the new one, while some parts of it really make me angry. The idea of a ship taking on, and Battletech did this too, and there's a part in the book that I'm narrating, that I'm finishing, where they are establishing a colony on a remote world. So I'm just like, yeah, space travel is part of it, but more it's the idea of finding another planet, if necessary, terraforming it and establishing a colony, getting that colony working. It's that, I mean, it's one of the reasons why Westerns are such a love of mine, is because you're conquering this frontier. And we actually see it a little bit in World of Warcraft, in, I believe it's the Eastern Plaguelands, Whereas you're moving through, the entire area is just hostile to every form of life that we know and a few forms of unlife. And then as you move through the various quest hubs, you clean out all of the crap that's there and make it green and beautiful again. I'm like, this is kind of terraforming. And I really like that, that had an appeal to me that I found very pleasant. But with Empyrean Galactic Survival, there's not so much the terraforming aspect. And the reason I say it only scratches the itch a little bit is because while you can build your colony and whatnot, it's still it feels kind of clunky. In fact, one of the games I worked on at EA, my first time around over there, was Spore.
Oh,
yeah. And so you could get to a planet, like when you're finally in space game, you get to a planet and you're like, hey, we want to establish trade with you. And trade starts up and eventually they say, hey, we'd love to sell you this city. You zoom in on the city and there are red lines connecting everything. You're like, this thing is terribly designed. And so you go through and you rearrange the buildings. So you've got, maximum amounts of growth and stabilization. And you do that to an entire planet and it starts producing tremendous amounts of resources and whatnot. I'm like, and you can actually terraform. You can get to a planet that's in the Goldilocks zone, but it doesn't have, the things. So you bring in plants and animals and you plop them down and it stabilizes the environment and everything's good. I'm like, this is a fingernail clipping of the person that I want it to be. But, but there isn't a game that really does that yet. There are games that do pieces of it. Star Citizen has some aspects. Elite Dangerous has some aspects. Eve has some aspects. Empyrean has some aspects. But nobody really does. Yes. Both of those, have the things because
No Man's Sky?
No. Well, yes, but no. For me, they're like, yeah, but you can build an outpost. I'm like, yes. You can plop down a bunch of modules that are static. But if you go into your farm and I'm like, okay, make this building rectangular and 80 feet long so that I can just plant rows of the crops that I want to grow in here so that I can make food. That's not the way No Man's Sky is designed. It's not designed to do that. You don't have to eat, really. So it does, again, some things. The commerce is kind of cool. Being able to fly from one ship to another and from one star to another. But, Dual Universe is probably going to be awesome for that. Hellion is very cool for being able to find and salvage derelict ships and do stuff. Not enough. And I think it would be neat to be able to not just pull components off of a ship and take them back and use them somewhere else, but to be able to disassemble the entire structure of the ship into its root components and use those to build stuff you want. Empyrean does that very well. There is Vanguard, Saga of Heroes, which Brad McQuaid made, who recently passed. Most of the game was very rough and really kind of difficult to play. Although the Volmain, big, wolfy guys, I'm like, hello, you're so cute. Oh my God, look at your fluffy cheeks. Oh, Night Hunter Garab. Oh, my boyfriend. Anyway, the gathering system and the crafting system were amazing. I loved them because you go off and you buy, it doesn't matter what your professions are, you buy all of the profession tools and you carry them with you. Because if you and your friends go and you find a copper node or something and your friend starts mining it because they're a blacksmith, and then you come in with a pick and you start helping, they wind up reaping far more copper than they would have if they had been doing it by themselves. So, you assist them in their gathering or they assist you in yours, and it yields more stuff for the harvest. I'm like, that is very neat. The crafting system is probably one of the most detailed I've ever messed with. It is convoluted. It's challenging. You have X number of action points. You have 2,000 action points to get from the beginning of this project to the end of it. And as you're going through, you have generally two choices, something that will push you towards that end goal very quickly, or something that will increase the quality of what you produce, but it costs more action points to do it. And so you have to balance things out. And every now and again, a complication will pop up that causes you to burn action points more quickly, or that slowly erodes the quality of the thing that you're making. And you have to resolve that complication, or it's going to continue to cause problems for you. And it was just incredible. The challenge of figuring out how to manipulate things so that you got the highest possible quality item within those 2,000 points was just, I loved it. It was a beautiful balance of things. And I really like that. And so it would be neat to see something like that in a game that does space exploration and colonization. But like I said, no game has encapsulated everything. And the reason is it's really hard to do. So that's why nobody's done it yet.
So I'm hearing if time and money were no object.
I would be colonizing space.
Okay, yes.
That's the short answer. Yes, I would be colonizing space.
In real life or like making the game.
Hey,
where you
if
do
time and money were no object, I could absolutely do it in real life because 1,000 years from now, sure, why wouldn't we be doing that?
Yeah.
You said time was no object, so it's like for the rest of time, yes, I could probably get there.
The future Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk.
Potentially, yeah. But to bring it down to earth a little bit more, what would I be doing? I would probably be setting up the ultimate VR setup so that I could go in and I could be in Skyrim or something. And I haven't seen many things that'll do that. I mean, in part because your window to the world is about this big, but there was something called the Omnitrack, which is kind of a round, it's not really a treadmill, but it's got sort of hemispherical thing that when you walk in any direction, your feet sort of slide back towards the center. And there's a big rail around you that is connected to your belt so that if you crouch, it tugs on the sensors inside the rail and crouches your character down so you can stand up and you can move like that. It's very Ready Player One in a lot of ways, but
yeah,
before Ready Player One came out.
That's awesome. Okay. So the Ultimate VR or colonizing space, I think you're someone to watch. I think we should be watching it because you got ideas.
Well, I have ideas, but they're never going to go anywhere. Again, imposter syndrome. But the technology just isn't there yet.
It isn't incredible, though, where technology has come. I mean,
oh yeah,
the fact that you and I are talking to each other across the country like this, back and forth, that is pretty incredible. And that we have Twitch chat. We have like Michael, and Michael says, so I'm guessing Destroy All Humans is not quite the game you'd build.
Not likely, no. I mean, there are times where I think, yeah, okay, good idea. But, for example, Lost in Space. Sorry, never mind. My housemate had to listen to me bitch about season 2 of Lost in Space. And just...
I just heard from somebody that they enjoyed season 2 of Lost in Space. So it's a very controversial.
In general, it was very good. There's just one element of it that just angers me to no end. One of my biggest problems with stories, and this again goes back to your question about how do you make them believable? Don't have them do stupid shit. For one, their actions have to make sense. If they don't make sense, them not making sense needs to make sense. If you've got characters who are continually doing idiotic things, like Katie Sackhoff, who played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. She was in a new series on, I believe it was Netflix. It might have been Amazon, called A New World or New Life, something like that. I think it's New World. And her character is awesome. I mean, Katie Sackhoff is amazing. I love her. The ship that she's on, I'm going to spoil this because it's fairly early on in the series. And if it doesn't register to you, then you're not going to recognize it as a spoiler anyway. The ship that she is on is filled with, I guess some producer was like, we need to make this crew young and edgy and hip and really, appealing to the younger generation. No, you don't. You don't, because there is not a single ship in the world or orbiting it that people who are this emotionally unstable, this petty, this bitchy would ever get stationed on board a ship that is going anywhere other than maybe from New York to New Jersey, just like a ferry. They might be allowed on a ferry, but maybe not. They might be under guard. I mean, the entire crew was just people who were written to be unnecessarily confrontational and egocentric and just stupid. They make stupid decisions and they think stupid things. And it's like nobody who is in a situation where you have to depend on other people for your life would ever say something like that. There is one character, she's the comms officer, and the tyranny of rockets, which people deal with in Kerbal Space Program a lot. It's like, you think, well, if you want your rocket to go fast, you just add more fuel and it's fine, and add more engines. And well, no, that adds more weight to the rocket. And her makeup supply on this damn rocket must have been enormous. It's like, why the fuck are you painted up like a slut? I don't understand this. It's just, the mascara alone is probably like 20 kilograms of freaking mascara. And God, there's no way they would allow her to bring it. And who the fuck are you trying to impress? No. But there's one episode where she's trying to teach somebody something. All of that bitchiness disappears and she starts treating them like an actual person. She becomes very likable, very genuine, very appealing. Somebody that I would be like, okay, I can see this as one of my friends. And it felt so jarring, so completely foreign to the rest of her character and the rest of the series that you're like, wait a minute. What happened here? What was it? Did the medication kick in right here, or did it wear off? Which is the normal her? I don't understand. Anyway, how do you make your characters believable? Don't have them do stupid stuff. And they can be confrontational, but only take it so far. Anyway, next question.
Oh no, I think that's a good place to end it for.
Oh, good. Whew.
I've had a blast tonight, and I want to thank you for joining me.
Sure.
I've been looking forward to this ever since we scheduled it. I was like,
Yeah.
I knew this would be a good episode.
Yeah, very true. Me too.
I feel like I saw a part of you, and I got to know you better, and that's one thing I love about this.
Yeah, that's been great.
So, if somebody listening who either wants to know more about you or wants to hire you for something, where can they find you on the interwebs?
So there was another question. Okay.
Sort of. You're right. It's the ending question. Yeah.
Yeah. Where best to find me? Usually on Twitter. I'm just at Trendane on Twitter. Pay more attention to that than just about anything else. see, which part did you see? My face, obviously. If you go to my Twitter profile, it has a link to my website and my email, so you can contact me through there as well.
Trying to think of an ending.
That's okay. You want to? We could just end with my favorite knock knock joke.
Yes.
Okay. This has been my favorite knock knock joke for a really long time, and I absolutely love it. You go ahead and start.
Knock knock.
Who's there? I love it. I love it so much. Oh my god, I love that.
Oh, that almost went over my head for a second.
It's supposed to.
Activating customized orchestrated transporter.
Well, I am back at my home of Ironforge until we one day reclaim Nomergon.
I'm a gnome.
Let's look at what has been happening in the community.
Awesome idea. Let's do that. The Turarch, who you may know from their streams, being a Converterade guild officer and a co-host on The Converted, has started a new podcast called Words of Warcraft. So her son Miles is learning about WoW, and they have questions from gameplay to lore to even hypothetical questions. The first episode was a teaser on the show's theme, and I'm looking forward to the next episode. And I talked in past episodes about Valdir's art, so ICBase has showcased even more art by them, this time regarding the Alliance, and even venturing into the Scarlet Monastery. This stuff looks incredible, and I'd love to see even more animation by them. Hey Blizzard, maybe you could even hire them to do animation for WoW. And Tosh's daughter commissioned a piece of art by Sandra that showcases the lovable characters of the Halfway Report sitting at a table together. If you haven't heard of the Halfway Report, you need to. It is awesome. Wildhead's Artist Corner for this month is showcasing Fab Crab. They do comics regarding Children's Week, and the visual style is so cute. And ICBase has posted another video by IK Edit. This time they remastered the trailer for Secrets of Ulduar. Oh, and also make sure to check out episode 74 of Dungeon Fables, which has a part 1 look at Ulduar. Enjoy the beautiful wrath of the Consecrators. And the ashes of Teldrassil still burn on such a winter's day. Mystic Network has recreated their nests in Teldrassil and Warcraft 3 Reforged. And I found writer's creation through a shout-out by Madros on All Things Azeroth. They shared a photo of their cosplay costume in front of the WoW picture backdrops at BlizzCon, and this photo was taken by Guiltless Studio. And Kevin Johnson left Blizzard in April. Well, ICBase reports that he is back with a new podcast called The Listening Game Podcast. His first episode was an interview with Lana Baczynski, who worked at Blizzard as an animator for Heroes of the Storm.
This has been another awesome episode of FrazlCast. Take it away, Frazzlepants.
Thank you, Scruffy. This was a fun episode. Capo told me he really liked it, and that was just from the Twitch VOD. I've linked in the show notes to a clip of when Trendane was surprising me with his voices. And shout out to Spaz Weston, who tweeted Poppy and me and said, so if your character sings, then belt it out. The more you IP, the more fun it will be. Remember, not all bards sing in D&D. And then Poppy responded, maybe I should get a lute? That could be fun, play some sweet tunes. Could be my bardic jam. And Spaz responded, as a DM, I'd give inspiration for that for sure. And a shout out to Kara, who is awesome and sends me puns routinely to make me laugh out loud. She posted in the Rubber Chickens Discord. That was a fun one, Frazley. I was yelling the trivia answers in my head. And was that Zeph at the end singing a gnome song? And that definitely was. Thank you to Zephyriah for the gnome song extra at the end of episode 139. And Kara also sent me, in response to the Jingle Bell Rock trivia in 139, they sent me a TikTok which you need to see. And after you've listened to that rocking TikTok, it's time to Twitch. I've added new FrazzleDazzle rewards, and you earn FrazzleDazzles just by watching my streams. For 1 million FrazzleDazzles, I will eat a pizza on stream. For 500,000, you can decide my next game stream. And for $50,000, you give me a topic, and I will make a song that will put on a future FrazlCast in your honor. In each episode, I like to thank those who have given back to this show financially. Thank you to Capo, Dusty, Pete of Project Phoenix Productions, and Thorn the Lagging Balls for the bits. And this past week, Thorn gifted 5 subs to viewers of the channel. Thank you so much. And thank you to my Twitch subs out there. Thank you to Ali of Dungeon Fables, Alessander of Pylon Show, Burkhart, Capo, Chris of MMO Reporter, Crunk, Gia, Jindin, Lance Blizz Gamer, Michael of the Genome Project, Pete of Project Phoenix Productions, Razarus, Savvy the Nerd, Sister Lord, Sinister Gaming, Helen Royd, Thorn the Lagging Balls, and Zorts. If you want to support this show financially, please go to support.gnomepodcast.com. And if you have Twitch Prime through Amazon Prime, you can use your free Twitch Prime subscription on my channel and get awesome emotes. All of your support goes helping support this labor of love. Thank you so much. Well, I am Frazley, and you can find the show at gnomepodcast.com. There you can catch past episodes and find out many of the places where you can subscribe to this show. Well, until next week, be awesome.
FrazlCast is a fan podcast that covers Blizzard games. We are not affiliated with Blizzard Entertainment, Inc. Views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own. Some of the art, music, and sound effects come from Blizzard games and are owned by Blizzard Entertainment, Inc. No copyright infringement is intended. The Gnome Train intro is by Ali of Dungeon Fables and All Things Azeroth, and the opening music is by Brandon T. Blaylock.
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.
Recording to see how this sounds on, so to say something.
Well, I mean, I could say many things. The question of what you would want me to say. I mean, I could just sit here and vamp about the. For example, what I have here is what I call a hot doggerito, and it is a couple of turkey franks stuck together with a tortilla, some American cheese slices. There's a little bit of pepper in there. I put some fresh ground pepper in there. This is my second one. I actually already ate one, and this is my second one. The other one had mustard. This one, a little bit controversial. This one has mayonnaise in it. I cannot reach that pitch. That's why I do Torin and Worgen voices. I just say, nope, that's way too high for me. I haven't been able to hit that pitch in about 40 years.
Okay, good. Say something real quick.
You want me to say something, or you want you to say something?
You to say something.
Because you said, let me just say something real quick. And then I was like, okay, does he want to hear him to talk or me to talk? Because if he wants him to talk, he doesn't even have to tell me that. He can just start talking, and it doesn't even matter. There's no real reason to tell me that. I mean, unless you just want to communicate with people, which is fine. Communication is... Sorry, what was your question originally before I dropped out?